You see, this is the trouble with a lot of our attractions. There's a lot of our attractions we think of, oh, they're harmless, but actually they're addictions. And that brings me to that. Oh, so there. And that's the last thing I'd like to discuss today. One of the best ways to avoid your causal emotion is to get another person to fix it for you. I'll say that again. One of the best ways to avoid experiencing your own causal emotion is to get somebody else to fix it for you. So let's look at this. I feel unloved. There's a high likelihood my addiction will be to have everyone around me has to love me. Do they have to love you? No. No one around you has to love you. No one around you has to love you at all. Love is a gift. Can a gift be expected? No. So if love is a gift and a gift can't be expected, does everyone around you have to love you? No. But what happens if I feel unloved inside of myself and I can't love myself? In other words, I have so much self-loathing that I can't love myself. I will then become addicted to somebody else loving me. Right? Can you see that? So my addiction becomes them loving me. All right. Now, let's say a part of that addiction is when I was young, the only time Daddy ever loved me, and I'm a lady, the only time that Daddy ever loved me was when he gave me a gift. Now what's going to happen in this connection? Not only do I feel unloved when I don't get a gift, but now if a man gives me gifts all the time, I'm going to think he loves me. When in reality all he could be doing is just wanting to get into my panties. But I'm going to think he loves me. Right? Does that make sense? Because I have that emotion. So I'm feeling unloved, and then on top of that have the emotion that gifts mean love, and then wow, all of a sudden I have a group of addictions. So what do I find? I find a man, in this case that I gave, a man who gives me gifts, and that's love to me. And you know what happens after 2 years of getting gifts? The man forgets sometimes. You know, like he's out working or whatever else and he wants to, you know, get a bit of extra cash together and he thinks, you know, and then he makes a mistake maybe of going off with his mates to the pub or something and he doesn't get the gift, you know. So he comes home and there's no gift. What am I feeling now? I'm feeling unloved. Is this man any good anymore? No, he's no good anymore. Give him to somebody else. He doesn't know how to love me, right? Can you see that? So we can see that what happens with almost every emotion within us is we set up these addictions with other people. And these addictions, remember last time we talked about addictions, they're like these big tentacles. You could think of it like octopus tentacles with all these suckers on the end of them, right? Coming out of you. You know, like waiting to actually wrap somebody up in the other end of the extreme, the other end of the addiction. And eventually it connects, right? You know, and it's got you. And that's the addiction. And then usually the other person has the opposite addiction, of course. Does that make sense? And that's how the interaction occurs. If the other person doesn't have the opposite addiction, you get angry with them. Because, see, addictions must be satisfied. You know, we see this a lot with addictions like that are physical in nature. So, you know, like, you know, you take away a man who's addicted to alcohol and you take away his drink, what happens? He gets upset. He gets angry. He needs the drink. Right? You have a man addicted to heroin and you take away his heroin, what is he, without any methadone or whatever other process there is, what happens? He gets upset. He wants that stuff, you know, because that's the addiction. You've got to have it. and you get angry when you don't get your addictions met. You get a man who wants sex all the time and you take away his sex, what happens? Well, you'll find in a few days, man, he's an angry man now, right? Which is his real nature, by the way. So what often is happening with our addictions is, the key thing to remember with your addictions, if you're getting angry, it's because you're not getting an addiction met in most cases. The only case where that's not true is where you have a fear. But even then, most of the time you're getting angry about it is still related to you not getting an addiction met. So addictions are a very, very good way of actually helping you access a causal emotion. A very powerful way. So let's look at some addictions. Can you think of some addictions that a person may have? Touch. I'm addicted to touch. This is a very good one. Right? What will I do if I'm addicted to touch? And perhaps if we use the mics, because none of us get this. So what will I do if I'm addicted to touch? Anyone? Down the front. And sorry.
We'll have an expectation from...
So I'll now have an expectation...
from those close to us, partners, etc., especially.
That I'm always getting touched.
That I need to be touched. Yep.
Children as well, so expectation of children and partner and so forth. So what will happen, as soon as they don't touch me, what am I going to feel? Unloved. I'm not loved anymore. Just by them not touching me, I feel unloved. Right? Now, that's a really insidious one because that can have a lot of sexual connotations to it, can't it? See, a lot of times women in particular swap sexual contact with touch. So I'm addicted to touch. The man, when he gets touched, he gets all horny. So what I then do is I make a compromise. Does that make sense? The compromise being that I allow the man, I get involved sexually with the man in order to have that lovely, nice, nurtured, touched feeling. So I'm addicted to the touch feeling and I'll do anything for it. All addictions will do anything for. Just like the man with it, give me the drugs, give me the drugs, give me the drugs. You know, it's like that. Give me the touch, give me the touch, give me the touch. It's like, and when it's happening, I'm happy. As soon as it doesn't happen, I'm very unhappy. Right? And this is something to look at with addictions because they are very powerful ways to avoid emotion, to avoid causal emotion. I'm just trying to think of some of my addictions. Sorry? Maple syrup? It's not really an addiction. I don't have it much anymore. I've lost most of my addictions and now I can't remember the ones I had.
I've got plenty.
I used to love ice cream.
I've still got lots.
You've still got lots. You want to mention one?
That the man should agree with me, praise me, in order for me to feel loved. Like if a man points out a fault in me, he doesn't love me.
Okay, if he points out faults, yeah.
And
so if he praises you, he loves you. If he points out a fault, he hates you now. And you're not feeling loved anymore. Yeah.
When really it's almost the reverse is the love, like it's so far in error.
Yeah, like when he points out a fault, it's just like devastating.
But if I was in harmony with love, it would actually be a loving thing for my partner to point out where I was in error. Exactly,
yeah. So you can see how you can be way, way down the road of error if you do different things. Yeah?
Yeah, it depends on how he does it.
Depends on how he points out the faults. If he yells and screams at you, it's not very loving, obviously. But if you're addicted to not even having the fault pointed out to you and only the praise, and that'll come from, usually that comes from, let's say I'm a woman, that'll often come from my father only ever praising me. He just thinks the sun shines out of my bottom and he just, just worships the ground I walk on all my life. Then of course I'm going to be addicted to praise me, that's love. It's not love though, is it? But I'll feel that's love.
It can be a loving act, but to equate one with love and one with not love, that's where the error is.
That's the error, that's right, yep. Any others? James, if we might.
A lot of people just crave attention of any sort.
Attention, yeah, that's a very good one, Attention. You see, most of the time, the reason why we have terrible cravings for attention is because most of the time in our childhood we went completely unnoticed. Right? Lots of us went completely unnoticed. And that was particularly the case for the older the generation, the more unnoticed we were probably. You know, there was this whole thing of be seen and not heard. Right? You're a child, be seen and not heard. Right? So, of course you're going to crave attention. Like if somebody doesn't hear you, hear me is another addiction. Hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me. And so what happens, like in that one, I'm starting to talk to everybody, you know. This is the time when I tell my long-winded story and half the people are not even listening because the law of attraction is already at work, right? In that the more I say, the more I open my mouth, the more they're not hearing me. They're off in some other land, right? But the hear me, they weren't very nice. They never heard me. I don't like them. I don't get along with, you know what I mean? And that's what happens. And these are all covering childhood emotions we need to feel. So our addictions are really, really good tools to help us access underlying emotions. Any other ones that you think of, Joy? Perhaps Mike over there?
I know this is mine. It's not being appreciated.
Okay, being appreciated. Yep.
You know, you do everything and nobody ever says thank you and
Yeah.
a bit of appreciation.
Yep, okay, so you cook every night and nobody says thanks for the meal. You wash up the dishes afterwards, nobody says thanks for that. Do you know what that means too? You notice that with all of these, it's because we don't do it to ourselves. You see, if I don't appreciate myself, then I'm going to put myself night after night after night after night in a situation where nobody else appreciates me either. But see, if I appreciated myself, I wouldn't do that. Can you see that? See, most of our addictions are born from the fact that it's not within me already. So if I have an addiction, praise me, praise me, praise me, it means that I don't think I'm praiseworthy. It means that I don't think I'm really any good and I need you to tell me I'm good so that I feel good about myself. The same goes with attention. If I need your attention, it means that I don't take any notice of myself. I don't feel like I'm worthy within myself to have attention being given to me. And so I want you to do it for me. Does that make sense? Or if we go to Ray with the mic there and then to...
On the line of attention, there's a negative attention. Negative behaviour.
Being addicted to negative attention?
Addicted to negative attention.
Certainly. You can see how that addiction occurred. Hey, when you were little, the only attention you got was when you got a belting or you got in trouble. So after a while, what happens is you're seeking trouble. So you become, if you're the man, you become the trouble, the troubled man, the troubled teenager, the troubled adult, and you're just always in trouble. And really, in the end, all you're doing is seeking love through the trouble, but you're addicted to it, and you don't know how to let that go. Paul?
I was just going to say that lots of things that aren't negative in themselves can be addictions too, like reading and exercise.
True, yep. So reading and exercise. I'm more talking about emotions here, but that's very true. There are things like, there are actual activities that we can become addicted to as well. The test to see whether you're addicted to anything is, do you get angry when it's taken away from you? Or anxious or fearful when it's taken away from you? Because there's a good indication that it's an addiction. If we go up the back and then down to Karen. Yeah, just here too, thanks. You can.
AJ, I was hoping you could tell me what the underlying emotion is to needing to be right all the time.
So I need to be right? What do you think there might be? Exactly. It's with almost all emotional addictions, it's the opposite emotion that we're avoiding. Right? You can see, praise me, I'm avoiding that I'm not praiseworthy. Being appreciated, I'm avoiding the fact that I'm unappreciated. Wanting attention, I got none. You can see can you see the pattern? There's always the flip side. What we're doing with addictions is we want the other person to actually fulfill something within myself that I am not already fulfilling within myself, or that I don't feel God can fulfill within myself. So what I'm doing is when I say praise me, praise me, praise me, please praise me, I'm actually saying to everyone else, you've got to praise me because I can't praise myself. I can't feel good about myself unless I receive your praise. Right? And it's the same with all of these addictions. Now, the secret is, whenever you feel angry, so whenever you feel angry or rage, it is usually because you are avoiding the fact that whatever it is you're angry about is an addiction that you're not getting satisfied. And what you're doing is you're projecting it onto as an expectation to people around you. Do you follow that? And if you look at addictions, it's a really powerful way to really hone in on some causal emotion. Because addictions are so simple to access a causal emotion. Because it's always the opposite of what you're addicted to that you're avoiding within yourself. So it's really simple.
When you say whenever you're feeling anger or rage, is that, and that's likely to be an addiction, you're not getting satisfied, are you talking then also about the slight annoyances, the little... Just
slight annoyances, right down into the little smidge of annoyance. That's right. All of that. So annoyance, I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, right? All of that is all part of the addiction, all part of the addiction. So allow yourself to see them as addictive behaviours. When you connect with that, you can do some really powerful things with your emotional work.
AJ, what's workaholism?
What is it? It's an addiction to be busy. So
yes.
Why am I addicted to be busy?
Yes.
Why do you think you would be addicted to be busy? So you don't have to feel.
Yeah.
You don't have to stop and feel yourself. I was addicted to be busy, trust me. I was running 4 companies. Man, I was just like addicted to be busy. A microphone, thanks.
Isn't that the same as what Paula was saying with, doesn't matter what our addiction is, it's a distraction?
Here I'm talking about emotional addictions,
yes.
Whereas Paula raised the issue of actually physical addictions.
And is that the same as workaholic?
Workaholic is a physical addiction, which covers an emotional addiction. Does that make sense? So all physical addictions do is cover emotional addictions. The key is to hone in on the emotional addiction. When you hone in on the emotional addiction, the flip side of the addiction is the emotion you're avoiding. So it's quite simple then to access the emotions.
Sorry, I got lots of them today. What about time? And it swells, as in I want to give people so much time and then I don't want the time back?
So you're giving away your time all the time?
Well, when I spend time with people, I give them all the attention, I give them all this time, but then I go through periods where I can't have that back at all.
Where you can't, or you...
I can't, I don't want it.
You don't accept it back?
No, I just want my own time. Leave me alone. Like, it's the addiction of wanting to give time and then the addiction of not wanting any time.
Yeah.
So it's...
So what do you think is happening?
Oh yeah, exhaustion.
So what happens is you give until you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And then you say, all right, I've got to stop now. I just need my own time. Please don't anybody demand anything of me now.
Okay, but what's the addiction? Like, if time is my addiction, then what's the opposite?
Yeah.
Like
Now we're talking about a physical addiction, and it's very similar to the workaholism that's been brought up.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry?
Or a desire to be loved.
Yeah, well, in the end, all of them are desired to be loved, noticed, or whatever. Like, I was addicted to be a workaholic so that I could feel good about myself. So I never created enough, is what I felt. So what I did was I just worked and worked myself into the ground in order to create enough, so that I could just feel good about myself. It didn't matter what anybody else said to me. They all, people were saying, "Oh, that's amazing what you're doing. I don't know how you get the time and all that." No, I didn't notice any of that. All I noticed was I wasn't doing enough yet, because I wasn't happy with how much I had achieved yet. And so I had a lot of judgments about that. So physical addictions are always covering over emotional addictions. And my emotional addiction was, Unless I was a super achiever, I couldn't feel good about myself. So my addiction was, I want to feel good about myself through what I achieved. Right? The flip side is what I needed to feel. I can't achieve anything that's of any worth, which is what I've had to feel. So it's always the flip side that in the end that you need to feel.
AJ, can you be addicted to truth?
It's a wonderful addiction. You can certainly, in a negative sense, you're asking, can you be addicted to truth in a negative sense?
Yeah, can there be negative aspects to it?
I don't feel so. If you're talking about God's truth, I don't feel so. Yeah.
Well, what about man's truth?
Well, man's truth is very different to God's truth. And if you're addicted to man's truth, it can become a nightmare. Usually the reason why we're addicted to man's truth is because we have a deep feeling within us that we're not intelligent enough, we don't know enough. Does that make sense? And we only feel good when we know more. So if we're addicted to man's truth, it's usually because of those kind of emotions. Being addicted to God's truth is a really good thing to do. It's to really have a strong desire for God's truth. And when you say addiction to God's truth, the key, when you're addicted to God's truth, if we use the term addiction, you won't ever get angry, right, about not having it. So if you're getting angry about not having it, then there's another emotional addiction, and it's certainly not to God's truth, it's for something else.
And so that's sort of like tied into honesty?
Addiction to honesty? Well, if we're expecting honesty from others, then we're addicted to honesty for personal reasons, and we need to look at that, certainly. Because in the end, I cannot expect honesty from you, because honesty is a gift of love that you would give me, right? But I can't expect it. And as soon as I expect it, I'm out of harmony with love myself. So I need to look at that inside of myself. Why am I addicted to honesty, and how do I react? Now, usually with all addictions, remember the sign of an addiction is that we get angry, annoyed, frustrated if it doesn't happen. So look at anything that makes you angry, annoyed, frustrated if it doesn't happen. Look at those addictions.